Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at the whole concept of inheritance, but through a really interesting lens.
We are. We're using Joshua chapter 21, specifically the part where the Levites finally get their portion of land.
And it raises this paradoxical question. What happens when the group that's closest to the source of power gets its reward last?
Exactly. The source material is fascinating. We have the scriptural text itself, but also these modern reflections that tie it right back to how we think about success and humility today.
Right, because the Levites, they were the spiritual guides for the entire nation. You'd think they would get first pick of the land, the best part.
Of course, but their portion came last, and it wasn't even a single territory. Our sources actually call this delay, this, scarcity, the true blessing.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So the scene is set in Shiloh, which was the new religious hub in Canaan.
And the leaders of the Levites, they go up to Eleazar the priest and to Joshua.
Right, and to all the tribal heads. But it wasn't a power grab. They were just asking for what they were promised.
Based on an existing law, right?
A direct command from the Lord through Moses. The thing is, because they served the sanctuary, they weren't supposed to get a big chunk of territory like the other tribes.
They just needed cities to live in and pasture lands for their livestock.
Exactly. So they could live among the people they were serving. And Israel, well, they obeyed. They gave them cities from their own inheritances.
So in total, they were given 48 cities scattered all over the place.
And what's fascinating here is how it was done. It was all by lot. The cities were divided among the 4 Levite clans, ensuring they never had a single concentrated base of power or wealth.
Wait, so they're the spiritual heart of the nation, but they're geographically scattered and totally dependent on the other tribes for everything.
Yes. They were completely reliant on the goodwill of their neighbors.
That sounds incredibly vulnerable and frankly not very efficient. Why would anyone see that as an honor?
That is the absolute hinge point of this whole thing, and it's where the sources draw this sharp contrast with our modern ambition.
Their inefficiency was their honor.
In a way, yes. Their lack of a central territory forced them into a state of immediate and necessary dependency. On God first, and on their community second. Humility wasn't just a virtue, it was, built into their existence.
It makes me think of that anecdote in one of the reflections we read about the person who camps out for days just to be the first to buy a new phone or a new game.
Right, and that person is celebrated. They get social status for it. That's what our hustle culture calls success.
Be first, get the biggest share, secure your independence.
Exactly. Worldly standards say that if you're close to the good stuff, you should get the most, and you should get it the fastest.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The Levites got their land last, not because they were unimportant, but because land wasn't their real portion.
Their true inheritance was God himself. The land was secondary, a means to an end, not the end itself.
And this is where it speaks directly to you, the listener. The reflections argue that if you belong to the kingdom, you already have the greatest treasure.
Which completely challenges that pressure to be first, doesn't it? Whether it's in your career or your relationships or even just social standing online. Your worth isn't tied to status or to stuff.
So the key finding from all these sources is pretty clear. Laying down that worldly ambition, choosing humility and dependence over hustle, that's the path to the real blessing.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, knowing God is your inheritance should fundamentally change everything. It changes the pressure to build your own security.
So the question to leave you with is this. If you're called to live a life of service, how does knowing you already possess the ultimate treasure change the one step you take today?
Is that step driven by an anxiety to gain something? Or is it driven by the security of knowing you already have everything that matters? That's something we're thinking about.